On a rainy day, a lonely elderly woman finds herself in front of a luxurious restaurant, determined to achieve her goal. Ignored and humiliated by the customers, she persists, seeking only an opportunity to reconnect with her son, the director of the establishment. While facing disdain and prejudice, she carries with her a photo that could change everything. A tale of love, forgiveness, and redemption, where mother and son reunite after years of separation. Amidst tears and smiles, they discover that forgiveness is the key to healing old wounds and building a new future together. Prepare for an emotional journey of reunions and revealed secrets, where love transcends all barriers. This is a tale of hope and renewal, where the power of forgiveness transforms lives and strengthens familial bonds. Welcome to a story of unconditional love and second chances. Don't miss this thrilling journey of redemption and reconciliation. Subscribe to our channel. It was a rainy day. Large raindrops fell on the ground and on the people passing by the avenue at this late hour of the night. No one noticed the elderly woman slowly walking along the road. The drops fell on her wrinkled cheeks, on her worn-out clothes. The old coat had carefully sewn patches on it, antiquated boots that would soon fall apart. On her head, a large discreet scarf. In the hands of the elderly woman was a piece of paper. She was constantly looking at it and looking around. It seems to be here. This is it, the same house number. I finally made it, the elderly woman sighed in relief. She stopped in front of an elegant restaurant. People dressed in expensive clothes drove expensive cars and entered with satisfied faces. You only have time to ask for money, said one of the men carelessly, passing by the elderly woman, but she didn't seem to have noticed the unpleasant remark. She opened a large glass door, stood for a while looking at the brightly decorated walls and exquisite furniture, and then went to the reception desk. A friendly girl who a minute ago smiled kindly now wrinkled her nose and said reluctantly, "You must have the wrong address. Please leave the restaurant immediately, otherwise, I'll call security." "Dear girl, I'm not leaving. I booked a place in advance, and I have money." The woman simply didn't understand why she couldn't enter. "Are you kidding me? This is a decent place, not a place for people like you. Go away." The elderly woman froze in surprise. Why was she mistaken for a homeless person? "Yes, my clothes are old, but they are always clean and don't smell, and my hair is clean, and I never allowed myself to ask strangers for money, even in the toughest times," she thought. Her thoughts were interrupted by the harsh voice of the girl. "Richard, come here immediately." A young man in uniform was near the receptionist. "What's going on, Milena? Is there a problem?" "Yes, look at this. She said she needs to enter here and she already paid for a table. Do something." The security guard looked closely at the embarrassed elderly woman. "What can be done here? Let's check what she says. Show me your reservation." The elderly woman pulled a carefully folded scarf from the side of an inner pocket of her coat and began to carefully unwrap it until a document appeared in her hands. "Here, take it." The woman handed her passport to the security guard. "So, your name is Miranda, 80 years old." The man was surprised. "Look, maybe you misunderstood, and it's not a restaurant for people like you. It's better to let her stay outside, Milena," he objected challengingly. "No, I need to go to this particular restaurant." "Check, I made a reservation," the old lady stated. The guard dialed the number, and the response indeed surprised. "Yes, indeed, there is a reservation and even paid for, but I'm sorry. This is an elite restaurant, frequented exclusively by wealthy and respected people in the city. We don't want you here." The receptionist intervened again. The woman was deeply offended to hear this. "Why are these people treating me like this?" "Because I've done nothing wrong to them. There was never anything like this in my youth. We always supported each other for better or for worse." Miranda was perplexed, but she knew why she was there and wasn't going to back down. "I didn't come here to eat. I need to see the owner." The receptionist and the security guard were perplexed. The receptionist was furious when she saw the elderly lady silently pick up her reservation and start climbing the long stairs. "Don't you realize what will happen when this homeless person approaches the guests?" She was angry with the guard. "What am I going to do, Richard?" "Don't worry, the manager will kick her out in an instant, and we will too. You don't know how hard I work to have a job here, and I don't want to lose my job for some old lady. I'll call the manager, inform him. What kind of day is today? I wonder, why did she come here?" Miranda struggled to climb the stairs. This effort made her legs ache. Finally, this endless staircase ended. She sighed. The woman opened the heavy door and found herself in a large, crowded hall. The many bright lights in the form of colored lights hanging everywhere made Miranda close her eyes. Tables decorated with all kinds of food overflowed. Waiters with golden trays passed by them, and in the chairs, expensive-looking men and women in evening dresses. Miranda felt uncomfortable, but not a minute passed. She caught the disdainful gaze of a man whose index finger pointed directly at her. "What's this? This is not a homeless shelter. Look at this." "Hey, waiter, can't you hear me?" "Yes, of course. I will inform the supervisor. We will sort this out. Don't worry." The waiter hurried. "That's right. This homeless person has a lot of nerve. Now they're getting into the restaurant because the guards aren't watching this," said the lady in the shiny dress. Miranda closed her eyes horrified. She had never experienced such humiliation. She wanted to hide. Another woman joined in to speak and point a finger at the lady under the influence of alcohol. She couldn't contain her emotions. "Isn't it a bit late for Grandma to go to the restaurant at that age? Are you already thinking about eternal rest? Would you like to come to the table with us? Just please, don't sit near me. I'm allergic to that kind of smell from street people." The narcissistic woman's loud laughter echoed through the restaurant. The elderly woman tried not to cry in the face of such injustice. "What's wrong with me? Yes, I'm old, but that's no reason to mock and shame me in public. They themselves will get old and sick like them. They can't understand that. When I was young, there was no such thing. We always respected our elders, no matter how much money they had in their purse." Miranda asked herself, but couldn't say anything out loud. But unfortunately, the mockery of the elderly woman continued. Screams were heard from all sides. "I didn't pay this money to see a homeless person. Why should we endure such misery? What is the director doing? I will close this restaurant." The waiters hid in corners and whispered among themselves. Many felt sorry for the elderly woman, but no one dared to oppose the drunken crowd. These people like to come here to have fun, more importantly, to show off their status. It was prestigious to work in a place like this. The owner wasn't stingy and paid generously. No one wanted to lose such a prestigious place. Only one girl, a waitress, was very upset. She hated to see a woman insulted just because she was old and didn't wear expensive clothes. "They are human beings. How can you mock an elderly person like this?" "I will now go talk to the restaurant manager. Tell him what's going on here," she said firmly. "You won't get anything out of it. The manager will support the guests anyway, because they bring profit to the restaurant, and the woman will be kicked out. No one wants her here. You haven't worked here for a week. Maybe you shouldn't take this risk." The entire team of waiters advised "No. There are things more expensive in life than money, but you don't seem to know them." The girl left the room with these words. The situation became completely unbearable. A man staggered up to Miranda, grandiose, and said, "Well, why don't you sing or dance for us who are here? Come on, let's go." And the man clapped loudly. His silly idea was supported by others. The audience laughed loudly. Miranda couldn't bear the humiliation anymore. Her heart ached. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her legs began to tremble, and she walked towards the exit. Even before taking a few steps, the door of the room opened and a tall man appeared in the doorway. He looked questioningly at those sitting at the tables and shouted loudly, "Gentlemen, what is going on? Is everything okay?" Miranda couldn't take her eyes off the man who had entered, as if she were paralyzed. "Scott, my dear, you've grown up, matured, and you look so much like your father, the same eyes and chin." Tears welled up again in the lady's eyes, but now with such sudden joy that for a moment Miranda even forgot the pain and humiliation she had suffered. But the man passed by her. He was more interested in the love of his guests, the regular visitors. "Scott, everything is fine as always, except..." One of the men pointed a finger at Miranda. "Well, why is she here? You have to admit she doesn't belong here." "Yes, get her out of here. Don't be ashamed and don't ruin our night." The rest of the audience supported. "Of course, it's just a misunderstanding, and we'll solve it now. As compensation, dessert is on the house tonight. No one else will disturb your rest, gentlemen. And you come with me." He turned to Miranda. "He didn't recognize me. Escort was just a boy back then. So many years have passed, a whole lifetime. He might have forgotten," thought the old woman as she silently wiped away a tear. "Are you listening to me?" Scott asked again, pondering how to handle the conflict correctly. Yes. The woman shifted, snapping out of her reverie, barely closing the door of the hall. The man said, "Hello, my name is Scott, and I'm the manager of this restaurant. It has come to my attention that the guests have behaved improperly towards you. Please forgive them. He simply wasn't expecting her presence at all. I will compensate you. I know you paid for the table. You'll receive double the amount. Not only will you be able to eat, but you'll also be able to buy something for yourself. Scott, of course, noticed the old woman's worn-out clothes. It's no wonder she was mistaken for a homeless beggar. And what do people like her want? Money, the more, the better. Where she got the money for the table is expensive even for a hardworking person. And most importantly, the why. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Scott decided he has no intention of dealing further with this strange lady. Let me show you the way out. Come down, Scott said, pointing to the stairs. Miranda couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was her Scott. Yes, now a grown, solid man, but to her, he's still a child and is still being expelled. How embarrassing. The insults and humiliations of the restaurant guest were nothing compared to what Scott said. No, I'm not leaving until I speak to him. He must know the truth. In her thoughts, she didn't realize when Scott had already pulled out his wallet and was counting money. Here, take it, it's all I can do for you. At that moment, it seemed like the woman's heart would burst into pieces, but she found the strength to say, Scott, I won't take the money. Please, let me stay and talk to you. Scott felt like he was losing patience. I have this homeless woman in my office. I don't know how to get rid of her, he thought irritably. He felt himself getting nervous. It's not in Scott's character to waste time in small talk with complete strangers. Sorry, I'm a very busy man. I don't have time to talk to strangers. Don't get me wrong, the man said. I'm not a stranger. I'm your mother. The woman could barely hold back the tears again. The manager, Milena, and the security guard, Richard, looked at each other. I said she was inappropriate. You shouldn't have let her in. Escort couldn't believe the woman's words. Look, this is too much. Why are you telling lies? What you're saying is a lie. My mother died years ago. As for the money, it's your right. Accept it or leave, but I'll have to ask you to leave the premises. Richard, deal with her. After a few moments, Scott disappeared from view. What are you all standing around for? Come on, let's go, Richard ordered. The elderly woman could barely stand. She was shocked by Scott's words. The security guard closed the door behind her. The exhausted woman sat on a nearby bench and cried. It was dark outside. Everything was ruined, and she had saved for so long. From her meager allowance to pay for a place in the restaurant where her son worked. Finally, the long-awaited day had come. In the morning, Miranda imagined the moment she would see her son. Tell him everything. To be able, at least occasionally, to see her son while she was still alive. In her excitement, the woman didn't even notice the unpleasant wind that had arisen at dusk. Her hands were frozen, and her old gloves were gone. Maybe she was lost, but what mattered now, thought the old lady, stuffing her hands into her coat pockets. Suddenly, in one of them, she found an envelope. How could I forget? There's a baby photo of Scott in this envelope. He's 6 years old here. He must remember himself, then he will listen to me, exclaimed the poor woman. After the humiliation and insults she suffered, she didn't tell her son the most important thing. Miranda decided to wait until her son finished work and then finally talk to him. How much time passed? It felt like an eternity had passed. Finally, the door opened. Escort, a few other people emerged from the restaurant. He had already opened the car door, casually telling the driver to go home. Wait, dear, the woman shouted with the last of her strength. You again? Listen, go away quietly. Otherwise, I'll have to take extreme measures. I'll have to call the police. Escort replied unwillingly and got into the car. Are we going? No, wait. Escort ordered the driver. When he saw the photo in the woman's hands, the man got out of the car and asked confusedly, Where did you get that photo from when I was 6? A photographer came to visit us, so we took a photo as a memento. You don't remember that, Scott, she thought and said. I had 2 photos, but the second one got lost. Fortunately, it didn't, the woman said. Surely, Escort knows that this photo was with him in an orphanage, then with the family that adopted him, and now it's in an old photo album. But how was I told that my mother died of a heart attack? Escort wondered, but found no answer. Hey, you're completely frozen. Come on, I'll buy you a tea and we'll talk, suggested Scott. The woman happily agreed. Miranda was happy to finally be talking to her son, but if the woman's heart was calm, something strange was happening in Scott's soul. Emotions overwhelmed him, mixed feelings of hatred and joy for having found his mother, and hatred for his mother for abandoning him. Escort was lucky to have an adoptive family. His adoptive parents gave him everything: a home of his own, a good education, and upbringing. But they were very strict in their demands. Escort missed the love of his parents. Things could have been different with his biological mother. They could have been, but they weren't. Why did you abandon me and now suddenly you're trying to find me? It's too late to change anything, he said. Son, listen to me. I'll tell you everything, just please don't interrupt. I was born into a large family. My mother had 7 children. I was the oldest. My father died. The younger siblings grew up, started their own families, and moved away. I stayed at my parents' house, without a husband, without children, without a stable family. It pleased my mother, and I suffered for living my life for nothing. But one day, everything changed. Thomas came to town, and I fell in love with him immediately. My mother reluctantly accepted. She had nowhere to go, but my joy was short-lived. Thomas left. It was very painful for me. I was dying of sadness, but the problems didn't end there. My mother died of a heart attack, and I was alone. It seemed like life had no meaning for me anymore, but I received good news from you, my son. I found out I was pregnant, and you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I took care of you, loved you, wanted to be the best, caring, loving mother, a gift from destiny, said the woman. What are you saying? Why did you betray me, putting me in an orphanage? You know, I don't remember your care, but I remember very well the terrible years I spent in the orphanage. If you came to ask forgiveness for that, don't expect me to give it to you. Not even your old age will help, Scott said with resentment in his voice. The glow in Miranda's soul didn't last long. She hoped so much that the photos she brought would help improve her relationship with her son, but unfortunately not. Wait, son, I'll explain everything, the woman began, but Scott abruptly interrupted her. I don't need your explanations. I don't believe you anyway, the man said. So many years had passed since then, and he himself would soon turn 60, but the memory of his childhood never faded. He remembered how every Sunday at the orphanage, he hoped his mother would come to take him home, but it didn't happen. Instead of his mother, a foster family took him in. Miranda didn't know how to apologize to her son, so she always remembered the day she took little Scott to the orphanage. He looked at her with tear-filled eyes and begged her not to leave him in other people's homes, but the woman had no choice. She herself was going to a strange place called the hospital and possibly forever. Son, believe me, I had no other choice. My heart problems started a long time ago. At first, I felt discomfort and then severe pains and attacks. If you only knew how much I blamed myself for not going to the doctors on time, when I did, it was already too late. The doctor said that only an operation could save me and the chances of survival were slim, and even if I survived, I would have to spend a long time in the hospital. Son, I'm sorry, I was scared. I had no one to leave you with. I begged my siblings to take you, and while I was in the hospital, my relatives visited me, but they all had children and gave the excuse that they already had too many mouths to feed. I thought I was handing you over for a while. While I was in the hospital, it turned out to be forever. But suddenly, a miracle happened. The surgery was successful and I left the hospital in a month and a half. I went straight to the orphanage to get you, but what I feared most happened. You had already been given to foster parents. I begged terrified for the address of that family, but the orphanage director refused. From that moment on, life lost all meaning for me. Escort was feeling a mixture of emotions. The truth was painful and hard to accept. He had always thought his mother had abandoned him for no reason, but now he was hearing her story, and he was starting to see things from a different perspective. He felt a twinge of compassion, but also a wave of anger and sadness. Mom, why didn't you try to find me afterwards? Why didn't you keep looking for me? He asked, his voice choked with emotion. Miranda wiped the tears from her eyes and held her son's hand. Scott, I never stopped looking for you, but I had no way of finding you. I didn't have the address of the adoptive family, and the orphanage didn't give me enough information. I was desperate, but I never gave up hope of finding you someday. I'm so sorry for everything that happened, son. I wish I could have been a better mother to you, but the circumstances wouldn't allow it. Please forgive me. Scott looked into his mother's eyes and saw the sincerity in her gaze. He felt a weight being lifted off his shoulders, as if a part of his pain was being healed. He hugged his mother tightly, tears streaming down his face. I forgive you, Mom. I understand that you did the best you could in difficult circumstances. I love you, he said, his voice choked with emotion. The two embraced for a long time, letting the hurts of the past dissipate. Finally, mother and son were together again, ready to start a new journey together. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to face the challenges together with love and mutual understanding. They had found redemption in each other, and that was all that mattered. I kept dreaming that one day I would have, no matter what happened. Today was the best day of all. My dreams came true. I saw you. Escort stared at the woman's face and eyes for a long time, trying to remember his mother's features, but he couldn't. He had no pictures of her, and time had erased her face from his memory. The woman spoke so sincerely about her life that he found himself thinking her words didn't sound false to him. It might have been a fairy tale, but he believed in it. And how did you find me after all these years? Scott asked. I'll tell you, son. About a year ago, in the park, I ran into a woman I had worked with long ago. Her daughter is the founder of a charity that helps place children in foster homes. It probably wasn't the right thing to do, but she did some research on the family that raised you. So, she helped me find you, son. As successful and intelligent as you are, I'll be proud of you, Miranda. Of course, she understood that her son might not be able to forgive her. I wouldn't call her mother. Betrayal doesn't just disappear, but maybe one day he would be able to understand and forgive her. And that forgiveness would be the best reward she could receive. The prolonged pause was interrupted by Scott. How are you living now? How is your health? It's just that you seem... Scott was confused, not knowing how to say it, just looking like a homeless person. Many people have told me that today. I lost my parents' house, my sister's children, my nephews tricked me and took my place, but I have a place to live. I rent a small room. Don't worry about me, son. What's important is that you're doing well. They didn't realize how much time had passed while they talked. It was getting dark outside and still raining. Can I take you home? Scott suddenly asked. Yes, of course, son, agreed the woman. Just stop here. I'm close by, just a few minutes away, Miranda said hastily. Are you sure? Maybe I should accompany you, the man suggested. Don't worry. Thank you for listening to me. I will pray for you for the rest of my life. Miranda told Scott the whole truth, just one thing. She hid from him something she was ashamed to talk about. She lived on the street for a long time, and then a man in the backyard of the house, where she liked to sit on the bench, took pity on her. He was the caretaker. He had a small room on the street where, besides cleaning tools, a small sofa and a chair could fit. That's where Miranda lived now. She sank into the sofa, her legs and head ached a lot, but she was happy for the first time in years. That night, she had the best dream of her life, a dream where she was with her son. A few days later, Escort showed up at her door. How did you find me? The surprised woman asked. You found me. Now it's my turn, Scott replied, smiling. Come with me, Escort suggested, wherever it may be. I'll introduce you to my wife and your grandchildren. You have 3 of them. Miranda was overjoyed. Then Escort handed her a key. I have a small apartment. No one has lived there for a long time, and now you're going to live there. Miranda almost lost hope, but happiness found her anyway. It found her and warmed her like the hot summer sun. This happiness was given by her son, who was able to understand and forgive. Thank you for watching our video. Don't forget to leave your like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you later, guys.